Hi, good morning. It's Robin Fritz. It's Facebook Live, Coffee and Cosmos with Robin. Welcome. Today I'd like to talk with you about a story about a ghost in a space clearing, and a ghost who turned out to not be a ghost. So sit back and enjoy and chime in if you have questions or comments. I'm always interested in hearing from you. This full story you can find on my website at my blog, Bridging the Paradigms, at robinfritz.com. But, I want to talk to you about it today because it talks about preconceptions and the things that I've learned in my work as a medium and an intuitive. So back in 2011, my friend Jody was living in a small California town in a small miner's cabin that had been used in the last 100 years by various people who worked in the mines in California. Very small, uninsulated cabin, 400 square feet. The cabin had been hived from Colorado. The cabin had been moved from the mining area when the mine was shut down to the small town that my friend Jody was living in. Now, to give you some background, my friend Jody is a very powerful, intuitive, and natural medium. She was seeing dead people from the time she was a little girl, and she mostly ignored it, as most of us would do. But as I started working as an intuitive and we worked together on animal communication, I encouraged her to expand her abilities and to go out and work with things that showed up that she might be interested in. And thank you all for joining us today. So I made some notes here, but here's my partner Fallon, my crystal Fallon, the citrine Lemurian quartz. And so I'm going to tell you about this story, this ghost story. But quickly I want you to connect with Fallon in the way your intuition works, because he's always helping me in my work, and you'll be able to feel his energy however your intuition works. So if you take a deep breath and just imagine you're connecting with Fallon, imagine taking your attention to the top of your head and just taking a deep breath and allowing the energy to connect mind, body, and spirit. Top of your head, down your face, your shoulders, your chest, your hips, your knees, and your feet. The top of your head to the bottom of your feet. And now imagine this gold light. It's hard to see on the screen. He's quartz, but citrine, a little cast of yellow to it, and Lemurian. Imagine that gold light at your feet and just running up your body, clearing your chakras, clearing out your energy, helping your intuition expand so you can participate in our session today. And imagine that moving up your body from your feet, past your knees, your hips, your chest, your shoulders, your head, your crown chakra, top of your head, wide open. And Fallon will be with us for the whole half hour. So, my friend Jody sees dead people. She's in California, and she's noticing noises in her house, her cute little cabin. And she's getting increasingly annoyed. She's hearing feet stomping across the room. She can hear the difference between the feet on the linoleum versus the carpeting. She could hear pounding on the walls, thumping, things being dropped. And she was getting very annoyed about it, and she was pretty sure she had a ghost in her house. And then she could see her, a woman who was dressed in dresses that looked like she was from the 1930s, 1940s. So I said to her, well, what are you going to do about it? See, at this, I was mentoring Jody and tapping into her intuition and expanding her skill set. So as a mentor, you're helping people take their own power and learn how to work with things and help them work through a situation. So I wasn't going to take over the situation, I was going to help her deal with it. And but the ghost became increasingly erratic, you might say. And she was tired of the ghost. And so I said, well, tell it to go away. And she tried, and the woman wouldn't go away. And not only that, the ghost told Jody, because Jody's a very strong clairaudient as well as clairvoyant, so she could hear and see this person. This ghost looked her straight in the face and said, "Get out of my house." Okay, so the house is over 100 years old. The woman looks like she's wearing clothes from the 1930s, 1940s, and my friend is getting very upset. Now, I'm still, talking to her about working with her spirit guides, having her spirit guides help her clear the house, and her guides weren't really doing anything. So, time went on, and one night things changed. Jody was lying in her bed, and she felt a hand run across her arm. Okay, so now things have changed, right? Things are getting difficult. And when she told me that, I could just feel cold dread flood through me, and I knew, okay, we are not dealing with an ordinary ghost, whatever that would be. So if the ghost could touch her, what else could the ghost do? That was my concern. Now, my mom used to tell me I think too much, but when you're working as an intuitive and spiritual consultant, I don't think that's possible. I think you need to always keep thinking, because a lot of what we experience, and all of you out there, because my show, this Coffee and Cosmos with Robin, and my weekly radio show, The Practical Intuitive Mind, Body, Spirit for the Real World, it's all about how we are all intuitives and healers, and we're all in this together. So we need to take care of each other and pay attention. And I was very worried about this ghost actually touching my friend. And I said to her, "Why haven't you taken care of this? Why haven't you told the ghost to leave?" And Jody got mad at me. She says, "I have. I've tried. I've cleared the house like you've taught me, and nothing has worked." Okay, so I have this narrow path as a mentor. What am I going to do here? Well, you train people to be proactive. You also train them to be safe. And I also train people to monitor their energy boundaries and to set boundaries. So if beings want to come and talk with me, there's a time every day where they're allowed to do that and welcome to do that, and other times when I say, "I'm sorry, I'm closed for business," because we all need time off, right? So Jody had tried everything she could, and she wasn't getting this ghost to leave her alone. Instead, the ghost was getting increasingly vocal about Jody getting out of her house, and she was touching her arm. I said, "Well, she's mad at you. She wants you out. She can touch you. What if she could stab you?" So my friend Jody's like, "What? Why did you have to say that?" And I said, "I don't know. We don't know everything about everything in the world. All I know is that if this ghost can touch you, how far away is she from getting angry and picking up a knife in the house and stabbing you with it? If she can touch you, everything has changed. And I'm worried about her being dangerous." So, that's when I said, okay, it's time for me to step in and time for us to clear the house together. And if Jody's seeing a ghost and the ghost could be dangerous, we need to deal with it. So we talked about it, and really here the connection between Jody and this ghost was the house. Jody's living in the house now. It's 2011. This woman looks like she's from the 1930s and 1940s. She says she's living in the house. It's her house. Get out. So what is it? The house is the connection. And I started to worry about the house. In my space clearing business, my form of space clearing is what I call space cooperating. So Portland, yay. What if the house was having trouble? Now, You know, you occasionally hear about the sudden collapse of a building, and you think, okay, construction materials, something happened. But they don't always have a reason for why a building collapsed, and I started worrying about that. This was a little old, ramshackle, almost uninsulated cabin in the Northern California woods. It was over 100 years old, thereabouts, and it was clearly present to the ghost in her time period and present to my friend Jody in 2011. So, what if the house then was vibrating between two time periods? And how long can you handle that kind of vibration? How long can the house stand up before it falls down? And so that was another one of my concerns. So it was clearly time for me and Fallon to step in and find out what was going on in the house. So we sent Dublin. Is that like Dublin, Ireland? And Jody and I were talking, and I said, well, what if she's not a ghost, Jody? And she goes, what do you mean she's not a ghost? And I said, well, she can touch you. She says, get out of my house. What if she's a time traveler? Now, in going back over my blog articles to prepare to talk to you about this today, I don't really know how I came up with the idea that this ghost might be a time traveler. Maybe I watched too much Star Trek. I don't know. Yes, great, Dublin, and hi from New Orleans too. I've been to Louisiana, pick up my puppy. But the truth of the matter is, those of us, we're all looking to explore the universe and find out what's going on, and we don't know everything. I like to think I know a lot, but I don't know everything. And I was worried about this person maybe being a time traveler, and that got stuck in my head. So we set the space clearing for the next day, and I had Jody get her materials, and sea salt and incense on her end and the California end. On my end I had Fallon, and as I said, my part in space clearing is to actually have a conversation with the space being cleared, so that meant actually talking with the house. And when I do this on Skype or in person in the Seattle, Washington area where I live, I do that before I go to the clearing to find out what's going on in the house. So I knew that the house was a little jittery and concerned, which added to my concern about the house possibly collapsing and that there being a time distortion there. So the next day we're sitting down to do the clearing. I called in all the spiritual team, my spiritual team, Jody's spiritual team, the house's spiritual team, and the ghost spiritual team, and all of the beings that assist me in my work, from Yellowstone National Park to Mount St. Helens to a variety of beings, including my spirit guide Gray, who works with me with planetary beings. So we asked this ghost to come and talk to us, and she did, and she said her name was Martha. And she said, "You're a ghost, get out of my house." And I'm like, okay, I know I'm not a ghost. Okay, so I'm being very gentle and very quiet and patient with her. And I said, "Martha," and I said, "my name is Robin. This is my friend Jody. And no, we're not ghosts. You're the ghost." And she said, "No, I'm not a ghost at all." And she's getting frightened, and who could blame her, right? I couldn't blame her at all. But I was also concerned, and one thing I didn't say as Jody and I were talking about her being a time traveler is we didn't know what this person was capable of. I mean, throughout history, we know there are powerful intuitives. Some of them are called shamans, some of them are called witches, but they deal with magic, they deal with the natural environment. There's all kinds of things that they can do. So we didn't know if this woman was a powerful witch and could actually hurt Jody because she could touch her, whether she'd hired somebody to clear her space. We didn't know what was going on. So the logical thing there is to ask, "Who are you? What are you doing?" So she said her name was Martha, and she was very insistent that we were ghosts. And I said, "No, we're not ghosts. We're just two women sitting here having a conversation with you. And Martha, it is in where we are, it's July 22nd, 2011. She goes, oh no, that can't be. And I said, yes, well, it really is. Jody's in California, and she's actually living in the house that you say is your house. So her physical body is actually living in the year 2011 in this house that you say is your house. She can see you, and to her, you appear to be a ghost. Well, I'm not a ghost, Martha said. And I said, okay, so, but here we are, two women. I said, I live in Seattle, Washington, and boy, times have changed. And tell us what year it is where you live. And Martha said 1945, 1947. You know, right away I get really excited because, wow, I was right. I hit it right. I mean, we're talking to somebody who's crossed time barriers, time traveler. Awesome. Like, cool. And then kind of like sad because it was a long time ago. 1945 was a long time ago. So we're talking with her, and we said, oh, okay. And right at that point, I wanted to ask her all kinds of questions. I wanted to ask her, what is it like where you are? When did the war between the United States and Germany and Japan end? When did World War II end? How do you buy groceries? You know, what's it like? There's so many things, and I really, you know, have this analytical, skeptical bent, which has served you very well as a scientist, but I wanted to know how, in the name of all intuitive and spiritual things, were we suddenly talking to somebody in a different time period? So we chatted, and I told her the cities were grown, Seattle was really big, there were a lot more people in the world, tall buildings, and she was getting comfortable with us, and she started talking with us, and we just shared, you know, who we were and what we did. And she worked as a cook, and she was living in this little house, and as the conversation progressed, it was friendly, and she relaxed, and she accepted that we were talking across time. And I mean, consider how awesome that is. I mean, our minds were being blown, but here she was many years ago living in the California mountains. Why would she even think, you know, that that was normal? But she was awesome. She was friendly, she was interested, and we told her, we're sorry that we're actually never going to meet you because we were both born long after 1945. And she became very quiet. And that's about the point where I started to wonder, why am I talking with someone in a different time period? What is the connection here? And it's not just clearing this house, because that's how it started, but what's the connection? And then I thought, of course it has to be my dad. My dad, Ray Fritz, died on June 30th, 1994, so the anniversary of his death is Friday. And my dad chose not to reincarnate, but to stay in the afterlife and run what I call a way station for dead things on the other side. Now, I know that might sound flippant or funny, but one of my missions in life is to make the afterlife normal for us. And I describe things as I see them. And so what my dad does is make a space. It's a little cabin in the woods, high up in the mountain meadow. And when people successfully transition to the afterlife, he lets them relax and rest up there and talks with them and helps them. And at a certain point, their spiritual team comes for them to continue the progression of their soul, and they go and they look at their life and evaluate it and decide what to do next. So my dad is the first stop for people who made it to the afterlife, and he's the reason why I'm a medium today, because he came to me and asked me to help the dead, especially the stuck dead. And we can talk about that in future radio shows and in future Facebook Live events. But that's when I started wondering about Martha. So I said, Martha, how old are you? And she said she was 82. And I thought, okay, I've got a feeling how this is going. And I said, Martha, are you dying? And she said yes. And I tell you people, I said, man, I so wanted to continue to ask her questions about 1945 to try to figure out how we managed to cross the time barriers and talk to this woman. But the most important thing right then was that this person was dying and I could help her. And I said, are you alone? And she said yes. So here's this old woman in a cabin in the mountains of California dying alone. And I said, you know what, I'm going to get you some help. Okay, you're not going to die alone because Jody and I will be here with you. And I'm also asking my dad. So I go to my dad and I said, hey dad, and your dad, your mom and dad, they're always checking in on you, right? Always trying to keep, especially my dad, trying to keep an eye on me and keeping me out of trouble. Oh, sorry for the phone. So I said, hey dad, can you go help this woman in California? And my dad had been paying attention. He goes, you want me to time travel? And I go like, Dad, you're a dead guy. Aren't you already time traveling? And he goes like, oh, well, who knows? Isn't being dead time traveling if you can do some of the things my dad and I have done, which is talk to people, dead people from different time periods. So my dad says, okay, fine. And he takes a few steps and he does this up and down kind of thing. I don't know how he knew what to do, but it was like, he just backed up and took a few steps and up and down, and next thing I could see him standing there beside Martha. And he stayed with her for the next few minutes until she passed. And then she got up and took his hand and they walked off into the afterlife. And basically that's the end of the story. But, the reason I wanted to share it with you today is things aren't always what they appear. And when you're learning to use your intuitive and healing abilities, like we all are together, and like I do as a mentor for people, is to help us explore with open minds and open hearts. Now, one of my favorite things to do is to think about what could possibly be happening in a situation. And as I explained to Martha and to Jody during that session, I was very worried about the house collapsing on top of my friend Jody because that it was bouncing between time periods. And the house was concerned about that. And I really wanted to ask this woman so many questions, and I so wish that, there were scientists around when these kind of things happen in my life. But I also like to tweak a scientist, right? I mean, what's more fun than tweaking a scientist, and getting them out of their mathematical formulas and their petri dishes and actually, exploring the way old scientists used to explore by getting out there in the world and finding out what's going on. But my job was to take care of this woman in the house. So as she was dying, as Martha was dying, Jody and I said to her, we look forward to meeting you when we both pass away. But in the meantime, there can be no further communication between us because we're worried about this little house. And you need to move on into the afterlife and continue to grow your soul, and we need to continue to do what we do. So right on the spot, I made up this idea, which turned out to be correct, was to have Fallon seal what I call the doorway between dimensions. And we can talk about that at other times, but basically, after my dad and Martha walked off to his cabin in the woods, and he shut the door in my face, which he always does, so I never get to see what's inside there. Fallon basically closed the doors, ran a gold light down it, and that was it. So there's been no further communication between her. But here's the thing. We could learn a lot about life and the universe, and we can grow in love and compassion, and there's never enough of that, right? There's never enough of love and compassion in the world. But there's us. We are all light bringers, right? The world may be getting increasingly dark, but that just means our light shines brighter, right? Your light shines brighter. And there's a couple things you need to know about that. Number one, Jody's spirit guides weren't on the ball. They weren't helping her. And maybe they weren't helping her because they were trying to challenge her to step up and help this situation. But that's why I teach a webinar on spirit guides, because we need to know who they are, what they're doing, and keep them on the ball. And make sure that they're operating at the level that we need them to be operating for whatever work we're doing. So that's one thing. The other thing is we don't know what ghosts and time travelers are, and that's one reason why I never watch any of those paranormal shows. First of all, at the end of the day, I want to close off my computer, and I want to go and spend time with my reincarnated dog and reincarnated cat and relax and have some downtime. And so I need to be comfortable with what I do, and I need to be able to walk away from that. But we also need to learn to think outside the box, so to speak. So I'll never know why it suddenly occurred to me that this woman might be a time traveler, which it turned out to be. Hi, everyone, and thank you all for joining me today. Adriana, maybe this is the reason why we don't hear these stories every day. Martha was a lone older who would listen to her story and believe her. You know, Adriana, that's a really good point. Who listens to people, maybe older people or maybe women. I don't even know if she talked about this to anybody. And really, her being present in the house, Jody lived in this house twice, and maybe the experience Jody was having with Martha over an entire year really only took place during that day. Hi, Haley. I love hearing from you. We don't know. I would have loved to ask her questions. How long have you been trying to get Jody out of your house? All of these questions, you know, but that's not my job. Well, that's part of my job, and that's what I do when I talk with non-humans, is to find out how they're living their lives and how we can live our lives together as equals on the planet. But my job here was to be curious, to be compassionate, and to be of assistance to someone in need. In this case, both my friend, the house she was living in, and Martha, who turned out to be alive and dying in a different time period. So, as you move forward throughout your day, as you explore your intuition and your healing abilities, which you all have, as you just walk down the street and notice the flowers around you, be curious, be patient, be compassionate, ask questions. You know, if I had not pushed my friend to explore this, and if I had not actually stepped in and said, okay, it's time for me to do something here because things are out of control. But if I had not persisted and been patient, I might not have been able to be there for Martha as she was dying. And this is why, again, I don't watch those ghost shows, because they go investigate. And they may say, yeah, there's a haunting in this house, but they don't do anything about the haunting. So there are people that don't get to move on. And so that's why I do my intuitive work. And at the end of the day, every day I know I've helped a few people alive or dead, and that's all that we can do. So thank you for listening today. I hope that you take this story to heart, in that, you know, there's so much love in the world, and here were three women in two different time periods suddenly creating a friendship. How awesome is that? And how easy was it when we just stopped to listen to each other? And I hope that's what we continue to do. And I hope you can help me continue to be here with you at Om Times Magazine. You can help by liking the Om Times Magazine page on Facebook if you haven't already. I don't know how to do a link without actually cutting you off, but my business page on Facebook is The Practical Intuitive. I'd love it if you went over there, shared comments, liked my page, and please join my radio show Mondays at 2, The Practical Intuitive, Mind, Body, Spirit for the Real World. And as we close today, I want to offer you again healing from the Goddess, hands on heart. Breathe into your hands, your palms, and holding out that energy to you as you hold it out to all of us. And then bring that energy back. Hands on heart. Breathe into your palms and hands on heart again. Be well. That's a good question, Allison, but it's how it worked. Oh, thank you for putting that up there. And those are the questions I wanted to ask. And we don't have real answers for it. And thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next week.